very much for the presentation. I'm so happy to be here with you. It's always a pleasure for the AIBPM community. And I'm going to share my screen to begin my presentation. It's right here. Please let me know if you can see properly.
Yes, we can see your screen, Dr. Miguel.
Thank you very much. Okay, the title of my presentation is Power and Influence in Organizations. It's one of my research fields that I was developing so many years ago. And such as the subtitle probably is The Corporate Network of Interlocking Directorates. So our agenda is a brief introduction of the topic. Then we are going to talk about relational power. After that, I'm going to explain you what are these interlocking directorates and how they are quite connected to the strategy in companies. And finally, we are going to conclude with some final remarks of the presentation. So first, as an introduction, we know that talking about power is probably uncomfortable, right? It's not, I mean, it's not a topic that we usually talk. And of course, we usually relate this topic of power with the manipulation, some sort of negative practice. But actually, across time, human beings being after power, they are always searching for different sources of power. And also, and this is a researcher that I usually cite, this Dr. Dachet Kellner of the University of Berkeley in the United States. He says that power dynamics is not only in politics or where the money is, or even in military operations, but it's actually everywhere. So power is this kind of social force that gets us together, and it's quite important for us to understand how it works in the society and how important it is for every social interaction. Okay, so what is power? Power is this with which we achieve that others have some kind of behavior that otherwise they would not have adopted. So that's, I mean, this is the meaning from the book, and probably is the reason why we are why we tend to relate the concept of power to manipulation. But actually, as we were saying before, power is a strong relational power, a strong relational force. Power emerges from the relationship between two or more people. I mean, it's there is necessary two people or more to create this kind of power relationships among them. Power has a social function, actually. It organizes communities. I mean, we need power to enforce some kind of behavior, some kind of conduct from individuals in society. And it's very helpful for the societies to organize markets and for the entire world. So we are going to explain then how power becomes a relational force. And we're going to explain what is relational power. Relational power comes from the generation of social networks. And what are social networks? These social networks are structures that includes some nodes that could be individual groups or even organizations that are linked. They are tied by these connections, it's lines that are connections that could be links or ties, any type of relationship between these individuals, groups, or organizations that get them together. That is a social network. And why is so important? I'm going to begin this with a brief story here. By 1930, Carinti was proposing some hypothesis about how far could be a person from another one in the world. And departing from this kind of calculations of population's growth and population's measurements, the result of the hypothesis was that any people from any part of the world is separated from another people in any other part of the world by maximum of 6 separations degrees, or 6 links in between. So that was like just a proposition from some calculations that he did. But after this, Travers and Milgram in 1969 proposed an experiment trying to test this hypothesis of Carinti, and they deliver a package from any from some individual in the United States. This experiment was in the United States, and they choose some individuals to deliver a package to other individuals, just without having the name, but just having the profession or the occupation of the target people. So, for instance, if the package says that they need to send this package to someone that is a lawyer, okay, so probably they are engineers, they don't know any lawyer from the university they studied, but they have a cousin in New York that studied laws, and he's a lawyer, so they send the package to him, and this individual receives the package, read the instructions of the experiment, and put his name, his location, and send the package again to another person that he believes he could be more near or knows directly the target person that they are after, that they are looking for. I can't remember exactly the details of the experiment, but it was something like that. So at the end, they trace all the packages that complete the circuit. I mean, from the point of the beginning and to the target person, because many of them failed in the middle, right? They didn't complete the processes, but there were several that complete the whole process of the experiment, and they discover and they actually validate the hypothesis of these 6 degrees of separation between these 2 individuals, randomly selected, right? But they found an important concept here. Besides testing the hypothesis of Carinti, Travers and Milgram found that there were some individuals that received the package more than one time. So that means that those individuals were actually trusted or were selected as intermediaries by more than one people that thought that they could be more near from the target person. So they developed this concept and called these individuals that receive many packages big linkers. So that was the emergence of the concept of big linkers, and actually in the management literature, big linkers means that there are some people that are strongly connected in the network and that have many connections, and many other people or many other organizations use these people or these organizations as an intermediaries to get resources, to obtain resources. Okay, after this, in 1973, Mark Granovicher was arguing that these ties that get together, the nodes, they are different from each other. Okay, he says probably these ties are not equal to each other, so we need to test how could be the differences among them. And he discovered basically two types of ties: the strong ties and weak ties. The strong ties were the relations that some individuals have with their family, for instance, or with their very close friends, right? That's why he called these ties as strong ties. And weak ties were the relationships with friends that you can probably see once a day or once a week or twice a week, right? They are not family, but they are friends. Okay, and the contribution of Granovetter here was that different ties could bring different types of resources. So he discovered, of course, that, for instance, strong ties could deliver specific resources such as trust and support. And weak ties are able to bring another kind of resources such as information, capital, financial resources, and many others. And I mean, you can think about your, for instance, your family meetings, right? When you get together with your family, with your cousins, with your, I don't know, your uncles, parents, and so on, probably every weekend or I don't know, you usually talk about the same stories, right? The same situations, and probably make the same jokes, right? So the information that flows within your family group is almost the same. Okay, but this group has some strategic resources such as trust and support, reliable support. But on the other hand, when you get together with your friends, and I don't know, when you play tennis or you swim or you are in some kind of voluntary organization or an NGO or something like that, you get together with these people, and this the flow of information is non-redundant, it's new. So you can obtain new information from different spheres in the society, from different activities, and from different economic sectors. So that's why Granovetter argued that weak ties are professionally more important than strong ties. Yes. Okay. And after this, Ronald Burt in 1992 established that there's not only importance in the type of relationships, but also in the absence of relationships. And that's quite rare, because actually we could think about that it's better to be connected than non-connected, right? But Ronald Burt said that this kind of holes, this kind of emptiness between nodes are strategically important, because forces the nodes to find some way, some intermediaries to connect to each other. Okay, if we are far from an individual or from an organization that we need to connect, we are going to need some other individuals or other organizations in the way to connect with that organization that is far from us. So he told us that this kind of emptiness between the nodes creates the importance of these intermediaries, and also promotes that the information and resources that flow all over the network could be non-redundant. Imagine the other side of the history, that all nodes in the network are fully connected to each other. All the entire network is completely fully connected. It could be very similar, like a family group, right? Well, where all know each other and tell the same jokes and tell the same stories and so on. So emptiness within the social networks are quite important too, ironically. Okay, we are just getting to the end of our story. So Newman in 2002 discovered that this kind of social networks actually, using these weak ties and strong ties and this structural holes, this emptiness between the nodes, they have the power to transmitting or to diffuse some specific business practices, techniques, managerial practices. And he uses this viral contagion models, viral contagion perspectives to argue that social networks behave the same way. Of course, we all remember COVID and how COVID-19 spread so easily and so fast, right? So how some viruses spread all over networks are the basis to think about how these managerial practices could also be spread and diffused all over social networks. And Newman called this the social contagion theory within social networks. And after that, and as a final step in our story, Jeffrey Pfeffer in 2010 said, okay, if the social networks has this potential to bring some new resources and some non-redundant resources, and also has this kind of diffusion potential, right? This is spreading potential to multiply this managerial practices all over many organizations all over the network. So social networks are a source of relational power. That's what the conclusion. And to measure how important could be relational power, we have three basic measures. The first one is centrality power. Centrality power talks to us about how many individuals or organizations are directly linked to a focal individual. For instance, we are here in P1, here in the middle of this network, and we have several connections, and we just need to count how many connections we have in order to know how much centrality power we hold, right? Okay, so it's just a measure of quantity. The next measure is the intermediation power that we in social network analysis called betweenness. As we were explaining before, being an intermediary in the social networks, it's important because other people are using you to connect or to get to reach other persons or other organizations in the networks, right? So you have this kind of intermediary role. So that's about the intermediation power, which individuals or organizations are indirectly linked, maintained through. So how many organizations are using you to connect with other organizations? And as we were saying before, this could be a big linker, for instance, a person, an individual, or an organization that has intermediation power because this group of firms need it to reach this other group of firms. Okay. Okay. And the final measure of relational power is influence power, and we call it eigenvector. Okay, but it's about influence. And it tries to respond which individuals or organizations are directly linked with. Okay, for instance, we have this node number 7, that is quite well connected, right, to the network. And we have this, I don't know, this other node here, number 1 here, that is just has 3 connections. Okay, so what could be more important? Which connection, which tie or which connection could be more important for this node or for this node? Do you think it could be more important to be connected with this guy or this organization or with this organization? That's the reason what we talk about influence. When this organization is connected with a well-connected organization, it gets more influence all over the network. Contrary, this organization, this firm, is connected with an organization that it is not too well connected, right? Here, it has only 2 other additional connections. So we could conclude then that this firm have more influence all over the network than this one because of the quality of its connections. Okay, I don't know how much time I have left.
You still have time, around 10 more minutes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to finish with some ideas from my research in with some data of Peru. Okay, now I'm going to explain you what interlocking directorates are. Interlocking directorates are created when some director with some executive of the board of directors is seated in more than one board, right? You have this kind of top executives that are part of this board executives of big firms, of large firms, and but some of them decide to sit in many other boards. I mean, for instance, in Latin America, we have some directors that are seated in more than 10 or 15 boards. It's quite crazy, right? I don't know in Asia how it is, how is it? But for instance, here some top executives hold some positions in the board in 15 or 13 boards. So okay, it could be very controversial if we ask if they are actually able to keep their control and management labor and responsibilities, having this with 13 or 15 boards, right? But that is another topic. Okay, so one way that organizations have to play these social interactions within the business community is to create this kind of interlocking directorates. It's quite beneficial for them to have some directors that actually have some positions in other boards, in other companies, because they connect the companies among them, right? In this whole corporate network, and they can obtain information from those other companies. Imagine that a mining company has a director that is also seated in a big bank board of directors. So this mining company could be able to get some strategic resources from that bank, from the banking industry. That's the main idea, okay? Okay, so interlocking directorates are connecting firms and individuals in two levels. For instance, we have this firm, this company B2, that is connected to this other company B1 through the shared director A, right? This director is seated here and here in B1 and in B2 boards. But actually, the connection is not only between firms, but it's also between individuals, because if we have this figure number 2 here, we can see the same firms connected by the same director A, but also director A is connecting this group of directors with these other groups of directors. What I said is that director B, E, and C are not well able to connect with director G, F, and D without the intermediation of A, right? Because he's the bridge. Director A is the bridge between these two groups. That's the reason why it's so important, the social network dynamics in organizations, decisions, and performance. They are usually obtaining several resources, and they are imitating business practices. They are obtaining different resources such as information and financial or financial resources for their operations and strategy. Okay. And why it's so important to study this director networks? Because large companies, I mean, at least in many parts of Europe and Latin America, big companies are in charge of almost all the important decisions in the country, right? These big firms, these big business groups that control many resources, many political influence, and many economic and a strong economic power. They conform this local business elite and also have a lot of influence in the society because of their political power and because of their economic power, right? So they are very important agents in the society to study. Okay, and these are my results from my research in Peru. I get a sample of large firms in Peru and begin to trace how they were connected through their shared directors. And this blue dots are the companies in the year 2000, 2005, 2010, and 2015. And the lines, the ties, the connections were the directors they are sharing. If the line is more wide, that means that those firms are sharing more than one director, right? So, and this is the situation from Peru, for instance. We have a strong corporate network. They are playing together. They are sharing resources. So here are some final insights from this, from the results of Peru. We found the resilience of the corporate network. They are not just playing together through these shared directors in the corporate network, but also they resist to change that kind of business structure. Okay, so over time they are getting stronger. Okay, they are progressively strengthening their participation in the corporate network. And the Peruvian corporate network is trying to be more cohesive in time. They are trying to play together. As we were saying before, power is necessary, actually. It's a double-edged sword, you know. It's necessary to build and link a better society, but it also could also have a consequence of concentration of power. So, so it's very important for individuals, for students, for managers to be aware of the existence of power dynamics and how this power dynamics works in the society. It's important for companies for them to know how to influence in their environments and in their stakeholders. It's also important to know how to build and retain individual as well as organizational power, relational power indeed. And finally, we all know that relational power could be strong for the better, for the good, or for the bad. So it's the decision of managers and the top executive team of companies how they could use this relational power for their strategies in order to do good or in order to copy or imitate some bad practices in the industry. So that was my presentation. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry for the disconnections.